Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Busy. I hope you enjoyed today's story. And if you do, please subscribe. Here we go. So you guys that are out there, just give me a little warning. This person that I have on, this guest that I'm so excited to introduce you to is not an alcoholic. Okay. Just putting that out there. But she is funny as shit. And I am so excited that she said yes. I reached out to her last week and I said, Maggie, will you come on? Will you tell me your story? And she wrote me back. She's like, but I'm not an alcoholic. And I'm like, but it's okay because we all need to laugh and we need some lightness in our lives, I think. So I'm very excited to have Maggie DePalo on. Hi, Maggie.
Hi. Oh my God, I'm so excited to be here.
It's so fun. Okay, so you guys, I follow Maggie on Instagram, and as you know, I don't really follow anybody I know because I find most people I know not to be boring, not to put that out there, but like I like to be lightened and I like to be entertained. And you are so entertaining.
Oh my God. Thank you so much. That is so nice to hear. It's been a crazy couple weeks on my social media. You are one of many awesome people that have reached out to say that they enjoy and most of it until recently was people that I knew or kind of knew. So I was thrilled and excited to be on here today. So thank you.
Thank you. It's been so tell me this. How did this get started? How did you become a comic? Because you do also have, and I, of course, everybody knows that if you're not watching this on YouTube, I'm doing my air quotes. She has a real job, not like
I
being a
do.
comedian isn't a real job, because let's face it, that's what Adam Sandler does to supply everything for his family, right?
Seriously. So I do. I have a day job. Comedy up until and as of current. I have a recruiting company that I've had for about 15 years out of Chicago. And we focus on recruiting salespeople. That's been my day job and my main source of income. About 6 years ago, a young girl was working for me. Her name's Mary Kate Beck. She's also a comedian down in Tampa now. Was taking a class at a place in Chicago called the Lincoln Lodge. The Lincoln Lodge is an awesome club, and they offer a femcom, so females only, comedy class, like intro to stand up. Okay. And she was taking this class, and I was her boss, but we had a good relationship. And so she was asking me to help write jokes at work. And so I was giving her ideas, and I was like, you know what? I think I want to take this class. So it's a 6-week class. And you go every week for an hour and you just learn what is stand up, how to write a joke, what are the types of jokes, how to create, how to create a 5-minute set. That's how you start, right? Which at the time was very daunting to stand up and speak for 5 minutes in front of people. So at the end of it, you get a grad show, kind of like a little talent show that you can invite friends and family, and it's at the club. And they tape it and film it, and they give you a clip. And I was hooked. I loved it. They gave me a clip. And the thing about doing comedy is, I tell people it's like being in a garage band. You can do it. You can practice with your, you can do it a little bit or a lot. You can start, stop. And I was doing it, alongside of my day job. And then I got pregnant. So I kind of just kept working at it. And the way to do that is to do open mics, which are typically like late and at shitty dive bars in the basement, right? Where you're just trying material, and it's typically in front of other comedians. So God love them that they make a horrible audience, because nobody ever laughs at anybody else. But that's how you continue to get better, right? It's just like writing down a joke and then going and trying it. So at some point I kind of gathered, I would say like 10 to 15 minutes of clean material. And I say clean because I think that's kind of what set me apart from other comedians that were kind of starting around the same time. Is I was older than most of them. I was married. I was pregnant. I had other kids. So I had more of kind of like family oriented, clean type of content that I think you can put in front of any room, right? So corporate gigs or comedy clubs that maybe have, for whatever reason, need somebody clean. I got some opportunities early on, and then kind of steamrolled from there. I had my daughter, so obviously I wasn't doing much for probably 3 to 6 months after, but then immediately was like, I got to pick this back up. I mean, it really is truly you know, the dopamine of being on stage and getting people to laugh there's nothing like it. Although it's terrifying. And before every show, I tell my husband I want to quit. But then afterwards I'm, you know, excited and thrilled. So, that was about 5 years ago. And then, I've had some really cool stuff since. I think, social media has changed the game for comedy in general, right? So over the last 3, 4, 5 years, people are now, whereas they previously were hesitant to probably post content, right? Because you don't want people to see your stuff. You want people to come out and pay to watch you do a set. You don't want your stuff out there. So if somebody comes to see you, it's the same stuff. But I think at some point, with all the other like layers of comedy in social media, right? People don't have to even be a comedian to post something funny. I mean, that's literally how people have gone viral over the last few years, just posting like a funny video or a funny clip. So, I think in the last like year and a half, I've put a lot more effort into putting some things out there. And for me, because I don't have the flexibility to go do open mics anymore, I just can't. Like with nights and weekends, I can't drive in, you know, I live in the suburbs now, so I can't drive into the city to do an open mic at 11 o'clock at night. Social media has been a way for me to kind of try some of the things I'm working on. And if people like it, I know that it works, and then I can kind of add that to my set list. And that's where we're at. I think last couple of weeks, I posted some things that have gotten more attention than others. And I think my following's increased pretty significantly. Starting with my story about my hair, which is a true story. I have to tell people that right out of the gate. I can't believe how many like friends and family like thought that was made up. I'm like, what would I have done to like manufacture this story? I don't even know how to do my hair. And secondly, it would have been a lot of effort to just make it up. And that's a very real story. I mean, I find anything funny. Like if you fall down this flight of stairs, I'm laughing, right? Like so the minute that happened, yes, I capitalized on it, took a photo, made the story, but like, it was a very real story. And I think that's what, I don't know how the algorithm works, but it was viewed more than anything I've ever posted, and then kind of steamrolled into some other things. So that was a long answer.
Well, it is, for one, it was hysterical. So for those of you that haven't watched this clip, will you tell them about it? Or I can tell them, but you should tell them because it's way funnier from you than it is for me. So you
Yeah.
get your hair blown out.
So was it November 13th? Okay, I had a show at Zanies downtown. It was a big show. It was the 312 Comedy Festival. Nate Bargatze and a bunch of other pretty famous comedians were going to be in town doing shows all over. So it was a big show for me. And I was also doing headshots that same day. So that morning I booked a blowout at a place. And I'm very cautious of like naming it or where it is, but near where I live. In the morning, so that I naturally have flat, thin hair. So if I do, you know, if I have a whole day of things I have to do, I'm like, it'd be nice to have somebody blow out my hair so that it looks nice later on. Clearly not an expert in the blowout world, because I just went in and, okay, so I booked the appointment. That's the important part. And I've never been to this place, and I don't know so these aren't like typical salons in that I guess people were getting the haircut, but like you're in and out. It's not like the person I go to. So they're like, all right, you're with so-and-so. So someone washed my hair, and then they put me in a seat, and then somebody else came over and was brown brushing my hair. Like, and I say it in the bit, but like the round brushes were so heavy that at one point my head was like weighed down. And I was like, what the hell is happening? These are so heavy. And the girl that's doing my hair is also, this is very real. They sell purses and other merchandise at the front of the store. So somebody would come in and like pick up a Louis Vuitton bag. I don't know if they were real or not. And then she'd come back and she'd do more. And then she'd come back. And then like, she was wearing a headset. She was, I think, on the phone. And while she's doing it, I am noticing that it's wildly big. And I'm like, oh, this must be part of the process. They're going to like tame this shit down before I leave. And I'm not kidding. The whole thing was like 16 minutes long. Like when I got to my car, it was 11:18. I got there at 11. And she's like, okay, this is great. She pours all this like white powder in it. So at this point, it is like a helmet. It is hard and it is big. Now I had no makeup on. That didn't help, but it was still terrible. So I just like stood up and was like, what is happening? you could see the mirror in front of you, but she's just like, all right, you're good to go. She's like, just put your hands through it when you get to your thing. You're going to check out with, her. And so I go over here and I check out, and like, I was in shock. I was really like, what the fuck just happened? Sorry for swearing. How did this, I'm just not someone, again, she thought it looked great. I was like a little bit intimidated, a little bit anxious of like what had happened. And I just like paid the girl, and walked out and was like, got my car, was like, oh my God. I FaceTimed like 3 friends who all literally like hit the deck, wet their pants laughing. And then I drove to my neighbor's house. I was like, you need to come outside. And she met me outside and like was laying just horizontal on her grass. Like, what happened? And I was like, I don't know what happened. She said to just put my hands through it, but I can't even put my hands in it at all. It's so bad. I mean, we were crying tears of laughter. It was crazy. You'll have to like show a picture when you post this, because it doesn't do it any justice until you see it.
Oh my, it was okay. By the way, I was just crying hysterically when you were just telling the story, because if you guys are just listening today and you're not watching this, I mean, Maggie is like a wholesome all-American girl. I mean, you should see her. She's very just like a cute girl you would go to college with that's beeping down the road. You could see her maybe in the preppy handbook or something. She's adorable. And to think of in this place with her hair out there, it's hysterical. Now, I want to ask you something, because I mentioned this comedian. I had no idea who Matt Rife was until yesterday. I'm going to be totally honest. Okay.
Oh, really? Okay.
Okay. No idea, but he's really, really out there right now because he was controversial, and what he was controversial about. So I went and I watched a little bit about that, because I was watching your stuff, and, do you think it's harder today to be a comedian than it was pre-COVID?
I personally don't. COVID, outside of having to do some weird comedy Zooms and things like that, and for a lot of people that count on comedy for livelihood, has taken a toll. But I can't say that COVID has changed anything from a perspective of not being able, like, that people are any more sensitive. I think that's just how things have been for the last 10 years. If anything, COVID, and again, I have a small perspective and I've only been doing this a couple years, but if anything, COVID kind of hit a reset of just like, hey, anything goes. We just went through a shit show of a time. Let's just get back to having fun and telling jokes. I mean, prior to that, things have just been are more sensitive, but I don't think COVID changed that.
Okay.
What you're saying.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because I don't know if it's me or if it's that I'm getting older. And when you get older, you see, at least for me, I'm way older than you, but you see things that you're like, today I'm like, that was not a big deal. And now they're making these little things into these big deals that aren't really there. So, which and it's even about like, oh, you called this person this thing, and then everybody laughs, but then afterwards they can be like, oh, you can take it offensively. And when we were talking about, okay, one of my other favorite things is when you talked about like going to the office. And again, I was born in 1968, so I graduated high school in 1987. You were talking about your coworker and these coworkers in this office, and how this woman smokes. And I was like, I'm listening to it, and I'm like, I actually sent it to a bunch of my girlfriends, because I'm like, can you believe this? Because in high school we smoked, okay, at the smoking lounge.
Oh,
We
yeah.
got smoke, and then we come back in St. Louis, Missouri, everybody's smoking. You could buy cigarettes for $1 down the street. And it was like, nobody carded you for cigarettes. It was like, you could whatever. You could never buy beer, but you could buy cigarettes. And the world today is so sensitive. Like, these people are like, oh my God, she smells like smoke. Like, you're going to get like some disease from smoke off of somebody. It's so
Right.
crazy.
Right. Well, one of my, I think I posted it like a week ago. I tell, on stage, when I was growing up, my parents gave us a note to go get them cigarettes. Like, I was 8 years old, a little girl, like getting a candy bar and Virginia Slims, and then lottery tickets. And I would ride my bike home, and my joke is like, the reason I wasn't kidnapped is because no one takes a kid that smokes. They're like, oh, that would be too expensive. I mean, again, people were harsh on Instagram about the smoking thing. Like, I'm not encouraging anyone to smoke. I just think this woman smokes. She has one smoke a day. It's like her, you know, like her lunch break smoke. Who gives a shit? And these girls are, you know, mortified. And I think it's great that they don't smoke. Obviously, everybody vapes and does other stuff, but it was like the respect level of just, this woman has earned her keep. She's been in corporate America forever. She wears pantyhose and her walking shoes to go to the train, and like she's making less money than probably all of you. Let her be. Like, she used to smoke right next to your face. Like, that was just kind of all how it came out. But yeah, everyone is sensitive. I think you know,
What did you get? What kind of response did you get from being in the drugstore next to all the vibrators?
oh my God, that was so funny. Oh, that was good. I think a lot of people, every drugstore in the area where I live, and even in Chicago, like, everyone knows that aisle. It's like the aisle that leads. I'm sure drugstores are all, you know, coordinated the same for whatever reason. It's like, this is where people grab their lube when they're waiting for their pink eye medicine. But the responses were great. I mean, everybody like responded like, oh my God, how awkward is it? It's also just awkward waiting for any prescription in a line with like your neighbors. You're just like, oh, hey, you know, they call your name and then they're like, oh yeah, we got your, yell out your prescription. That was good. Well, one thing I wanted to mention, back to the hair thing. So in my bit of telling how it happened and then showing the photo, I do say, that one of the reasons I didn't say anything is because I'm white and I have blonde hair and I didn't want to end up on the news. And I did take a lot of heat. I'm still taking heat, on social media for that being a racist or a spicy comment. And I want to say, for anyone listening, my intentions were to make fun of well, number one, my own race and my own hair color. And it was very much about the whole Karen, you know, joke, and that like, and because I looked the way I did, I was like, oh, this wasn't the look I was going to go in there and like complain with, so that somebody could virally be like, look at this asshole with her Beetlejuice hair complaining about the hair she just paid for. So I wanted to, that's an example of people. And if you look at, everyone says don't read the comments. I read every comment because you can't help yourself. But most of the people who were saying it was racist, I would say, tended to be younger, right? Like, they didn't understand the perspective of like what I was trying to say. So maybe that's back to your point of like, are things more difficult now? They're just different. But what I have realized in the last 2 weeks on social media, my following, the people that, you know, are not mad at me for driving and talking on the phone, and people that don't say anything about the smoking, tend to be women that are like 35 and older. And to be honest with you, that's who I want to come see me. Number one, they're going to pay to come see me, right? And they're the people that matter. It's like, from a perspective of like building an audience, that's who I care about. And if I offend a little bit of the people below that, it's a bummer.
Don't say
but
you're sorry. Don't say you're ever sorry. No.
It's not, no, I'm not, it's not going to affect me. I hate to say that, like, not. And I think Matt Rife, from that perspective of, you would think, if you look at his audience and his following and the people that go out and pay a lot of money to see his shows, it's not millennials. It's not, it's people older. Even though he is a millennial, looks like a millennial, you know, lives like a millennial, his content is geared much more towards, I would say, the older millennials, or what do you call it? The
People my age, that's 55-year-olds, the people that graduated high school in the 80s and 90s. I mean, the woman that was I watched one of his clips where the woman that was like egging, I forget what's the technical name when when you're going back and forth with somebody in the audience. Isn't there a technical name for it? He used this name and I can't remember what he called it, but anyway.
heckling.
Like heckling. And this woman's like, oh my God, she hands him this gift and he like opens it up and it's like this t-shirt, will you let me come and give you a blowjob? And she's like, I mean, all these, and this is like, you're like, I'm like, what? And the woman's like, I'm 45 years old. My daughter's 21. And then he gets FaceTime with the daughter. I mean, it's so fun and funny. And I wonder if the people it's like, another famous woman who actually I think is hysterical. She's not always hysterical, but somebody said, I don't know if you saw her, but she's like, grab a helmet because we really, I mean, at this point in life, it's like, come on, everybody, we got to lighten up. That's why I had to reach out to you and have you on here. It's like,
Yeah.
we have to bring some lightness to our world. Like
Yeah.
we all battle something. If it's alcoholism, if it's eating disorder, if it's spending, if it's eating, whatever it is, but we got to lighten up. We got to
Yeah.
raise each other up and say, you know what? Get over it. It's like wear life like a loose garment. Like, come on, have some fun. It's,
Yeah.
you know,
No, I agree. And you know what? It's, where did I see this or read this? I'll think of it after the fact, but we spend so much time as a society, especially in America, especially in Illinois, focusing on things like that, these small, I don't want to say they're insignificant things, but if we put any of that like major effort towards some of these other things in life, like there are things that truly need attention. That stuff doesn't, right? Like, I don't think that I'm not going to say that there aren't people that, have kids that have disabilities aren't offended, but they're likely not comedy fans, right? Like, there just needs to be a separation of the two things and stay in your lane, right? I love that. Like, if he's not for you, don't watch him, don't pay to see him. He will never affect your life. If he says something do you know what I mean? Like, focus on something that means so much more to you and your family. Trying to get him canceled because he said something offensive. I mean, really, I just think that we should spend our resources on something else. The interesting thing about Matt Rife, if you were to ask most comedians, his act is crowd work, and he's opened the door to people coming to see him and talking to him, which is 99.9% of comedians would say they hate that. They do not want you to come to a show and interact, right? I don't do any crowd work. I don't like crowd work. That makes me very uncomfortable. It throws me off. And if you were to go to any club, they would frown upon it. In fact, if a woman started talking and saying, I have something for you, they would likely like grab her and make her leave. So it's interesting to see he's created this different way of doing things. But it's working for him. I mean, he's selling out a world tour. So who can shit on that?
well, exactly. And I think that what we're doing today, it's like the fact that he's doing something that works for him that doesn't work for you, that doesn't mean he's bad. And so people, I think that like to cast judgment on others and want to complain instead of not having joy for others. Like, and as you mentioned, like, I do not like Metallica. I am sorry. I have never been a headbanger in my life. Ozzy Osbourne does not do it for me. Am I going to
Yeah.
pay to go see an Ozzy Osbourne concert? No. I'm not going to
Right.
put him on my radio in my car on my driving around to run errands. I'm just not. I just put on something else I like. And we have to be aware of this today in our world. It's like we've got to let everybody be who they want to be, and it's okay. And if somebody's having fun doing what they're doing, if you're not hurting anybody else, that's cool.
Right. Right. Well, and that's how I look at, like, for every negative comment on one of my posts, there are so many really great ones that I'm like, okay, here's an example of like, this brings 90 people joy and one person's upset. The law of averages says I'm okay. If I was getting 90 bad comments in one, right, you just have to like, I don't know. But I don't know that COVID was, I think COVID is just generally the years that it happened were a change in a lot of things. Obviously the people that transitioning to different sectors. I just think a lot happened in those years, and I think we look at COVID as this like reset year, but was it all because of COVID? I mean, we'll never know, but anyway, the world is a crazy, crazy place. But comedy is one thing. It's like, my thing is like, if you don't have anything funny to say, don't say anything at all. Like, that's my perspective. Now, most people might say I'm immature. You're not going to have me on a, political podcast. I'm not going to talk about anything super educational. It's like, that is my shtick, but I stay in my lane, right? Like, I don't talk about a lot of serious things on stage because it's not my shtick. It's not what I'm interested in. It's not how I live my life. That's just not who I am. So
No,
we'll
I
see.
think people like you and like the entitled housewife, I mean, she is
Becky.
hysterical. Yeah, Becky. She's like crazy how she does both chicks. I mean, literally in the beginning, I thought she was married and she had a husband named Scott. I had no idea
So funny.
that she was gay. But what she says is so funny when she's like sitting down and ordering food. It's like making light of life today is
Right.
where we can find joy and maybe come together as a nation, like in a way that's like, we all love this stuff. We all love to laugh at each other. We all love, I mean, people tell a divorce joke and I don't go on the ground on the pot of like, oh my God, I can't believe you're talking about divorce. I mean, I'm a divorced woman. That's who I am. I'm a drunk. You talk about drunk, people talk about drunks in this way that's like, oh, they're so horrible. They're so horrible. I'm like, well, did you realize George Bush was a drunk? I mean, like everybody has got something. Like, when
Right.
are we going to decide that we want to come together and not really care about this stuff so much and laugh
Right.
about it and at least be glad we live in a place that we can do these things and not have somebody come up with a hook and maybe hang you in the, and tar you in the
Right.
center of town.
I love that you have that perspective on your sobriety. So tell me can you give me the quick skinny on like on your journey and kind of what motivated you to do this?
So the crazy long story short is that I got sober. Well, for one, I always wanted to be the next Barbara Walters. That was my gig, always. I got a job graduating. I graduated with a communications degree. I got a job working at a CBS affiliate in Philadelphia. But because of my big mouth, I got fired. So then I went off, and instead of doing any other work, I got married and I got an MRS degree and had 3 babies really quickly. Blew that up, started drinking like it was my job and realized that I could not be a mom and partying the way I was. Now, I wasn't like I still had a car in my driveway. I still had my, food in the, I mean, I had not gotten to these places yet. And so I quit drinking. And when I quit drinking, there was so much shame around it, right? Because there's all this shame in the world. And that's where a lot of this stuff, like people are ashamed of you saying, like, oh my God, she's a smoker. Like, are you going to shame her because she smokes? That's what they're doing. They're shaming her. It's like, no, she likes to smoke. That's what she does. Who gives a shit? It doesn't hurt you. And so the shame was so big for me that I went and I got a patent attorney and I patented sober, not ashamed. I'm like,
Awesome.
but I did have shame. I was not sober, not ashamed, but I did patent it anyway. And I met a woman, and everything I think happens in life for a reason. We meet people along our path when it's supposed to happen, and things happen because, again, it's the timing. It's not us, it's divine intervention. And somebody said, why don't you start a podcast? And that was over 7 years ago. And so I've been doing a podcast longer than majority of people that are out there. Joe Rogan's like, I want to get him. I'm chasing him like as fast as I can. For a long time, I didn't do it to make any money. And then I found out like, oh, you're in the top 3% of podcasters globally. And I'm like, oh my God, I am. And I just have been doing it myself. And I interview people that I find to be interesting and to tell me about their life and their journey and how they got the courage to do the things that they're doing. I mean, it takes a lot of courage to stand up in front of a bunch of people and tell people your like intimate things and tell people like, I'm at my, when you went out on Thanksgiving, you're like, who gives somebody a bench to sit on, a hard wooden bench? And most people will be like, oh my God, who am I going to offend today? Who's going to take that to badly? Oh my gosh, I was talking badly about my mom. Oh, the bench makers of the world. Oh, the tree maker, whatever, the tree cutter. Deep down people, whatever, are going to be offended. And it's like, no, they're not. We've got to like come together and laugh and have joy. And so busy living
Yeah.
sober is all about that. Like I'm here living a life as I was drunk for a long time. And for 17 years, God willing, I haven't had, it's working on 18. I haven't had a drink, but that doesn't
That's
change who I
awesome.
am as a human being, right? Like I'm still a woman. I'm still a wife. I'm a mom. I'm all these other things. And I love to laugh
I
and I
love it.
love to have fun.
That's so cool. Well, so this will be 18 years.
I will be 18 years in August, God willing. Yeah.
Love it. My mom is sober. Almost 40, it'll be 40 years.
Oh
Like
my God. No wonder you're so cool. You have a sober
almost
mom.
40. I have a sober mom, a sober Irish Catholic mom.
Yeah.
She's best and very funny and your personality and style reminds me a lot of like, I guess our family, my upbringing. Yeah, my dad wasn't sober. My dad passed a couple of years ago, but my mom was sober almost our whole lives that I can recall. And I think so when you had reached out, I was like, I hope she doesn't, I just wanted to be, you know, um, sensitive to your audience in the event that they were expecting that. But I have a lot of experience with sobriety, and I will say it's pretty big in the comedy community, I would say, of some of the comedians that I'm pretty close with. And if you research others, there's a good amount of folks, some of the bigger ones that quit drinking at some point or quit everything.
It's
or figure it out.
It's really interesting in that where we are living today. And by the way, congratulations to your mom. Is she still here?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Congratulations to mom. One day at a time. I always say one day at a time. My mom's no longer here, and her name was Patty Ann Riley, if that gives you any
Love it.
so yeah, so Irish Catholic as well on half of me, and the other half's Jewish. No wonder I'm such a, whatever. I always say that. My dad's Jewish, my mom was Irish Catholic. No wonder I'm a crazy person. But being able to be transparent in who you are is so huge today, and being okay with it. And I want everybody to know that it's okay. And being sober right now is really kind of in. And
Is.
you notice?
Oh, that's what I was going to say. Again, I want to be cautious of the younger community.
I'm not too cautious. We have to be real. And so just say what you want to say.
It is. Yeah. Okay. It's very in. And what a great thing to be in, right? But my friend Chelsea Hood, who's a comedian as well, what did she say? She's like, as soon as people get sober, they get famous. And it's been true for a few people in Chicago. Like the minute they stopped, their careers kind of took off. I mean, it's certainly something like being in a band or working at a bar, right? You're in places where people are there to be entertained and are likely drinking, right? Like if you go to a Zanies club in Chicago or Rosemont, it's a 2-drink minimum. It's just part of the experience and that's how they make money, right? But have a few drinks. So as a comedian, you're waiting around, right? You're calming nerves, and you're likely going to hang out with comedians afterwards and drink or go. So it's a big part of the industry. But the folks that I know that have stopped, I won't name any names or anything, but have all done very well since. So yeah, I mean, I think you see people use it. So the younger generation, I would say now, that are probably, like you said, it's like in to be sober. What is that called? Is it California sober? Do you use that?
Well, they're all different ones. So California sober means that you smoke weed.
Okay.
Now there is this whole group of gray area drinkers, and they're sober curious.
Sober curious.
And sober sisses, and you can join Facebook groups and get together with like-minded women that have quit drinking. Where when I got sober, and I'm sure when your mom got sober, we went over to the church basement and went to a 12-step meeting because that was the only option. But today, like anything, I think, you put a pretty package on it and it makes it prettier, right?
Right. Right.
But it's the same thing.
Wait, so sober sis, I've never heard. What does that mean? Or is that like my friend?
Yeah, like sober sisters. So they go on and they do this. They find groups on Facebook that are sober, like you're a sober sis. Oh, you're a sober sis. And they speak a different language. The way that they get sober, when I got sober in AA, that's just worked for me. And, we do these steps, but they design it in a different way that looks a little prettier. The words are a little bit different. It's more, it was a big book of Alcoholics Anonymous was written, was it 34? It was a long, long time ago. So the way it was written is very archaic. It's kind of like reading Shakespeare today for young people. They're like, I don't understand this word. And a lot of people don't know that when Bill Wilson was writing the book, he was taking a writing class at the same time. So he used every large adjective and verb you could find.
Right.
It makes so all these young people are like, what does this mean? But people have dumbed it down a little bit. And I hate to say it like that. Not that you're not smart if you're getting sober, but you know what I mean. And it's
they have
a
like
little bit easier. And a little easier package. And sobriety, and as you mentioned, it's like getting out there and being able to laugh and be entertained today and not be threatened by my sobriety is just, it's like I got what I needed, and I have these tools now in my toolbox. When I feel like whatever, I can go and to a meeting or talk to somebody and feel better about it. But I can still go to all these fun places like comedy clubs and hear you. But also so many things I hate about social media, but it's a good thing because I got to meet you and I've got other people. And it's been such a gift in that way because social media can be really hard, especially for young people, you know?
Totally. Well, and you'll see so my dad died in 22 years ago. And
I'm
like,
so sorry.
thank you. No, he was wonderful. Super funny, great dude. And my mom got on Instagram. My mom has never been on any social media. My dad definitely wasn't on social media. But my mom got on, I guess right before he died. Just she's like, I'm sick of my friends telling me that they're seeing pictures of the kids. And I'm like, all right, we'll set you up. And then my dad died, and then she was on it all the time. And so we both were getting, obviously the algorithm works like people, like women that were either widows or grieving. And then I was getting like sober, right? Like I was like, is this just like the sad algorithm? They're just like, you should quit drinking. Your dad died. Your mom is alone. You should look out. Like we were both getting the same. And it was because my mom was like sending me shit, right? She would send me, I would see it in my DMs. I would go into it. Now we're like both in this like sad vortex. And so I still get a lot of sober accounts. And what are your thoughts, I guess, on how many women and men, but mostly women that I'm seeing, are sharing their sobriety stories and sharing, because some of their posts, I imagine yours is more lighthearted, are
Heavy.
say dark, yeah, like this time last year, and it's like a photo of them like on their couch sleeping. And again, like it's like you can't even help yourself to just keep going through it. What are your thoughts on those groups for women that do that?
I think that, for one, I think women, and I think this has been through time, women aren't very good at supporting each other. They're not. Women are
Okay.
not always nice to each other, are they? No, they're just not.
No.
They're not. And so I think that even getting sober, like look at I mean, they want attention somehow, right? By doing, but I didn't go on. Did I go on? I probably went on social media and told everybody that I was sober for a really long time. But my whole thing about being sober for me was like, look, I'm sober. I'm still fun. But now I'm not going to fall out of your house at the end of the night. Okay. I'm not
Right.
going to be tripping. I'm not going to be like, oh my God, did she drive her car? Like certain things. And so but I think that whatever works for you, I tend to skim through. I don't even really watch that many sober thing. I do, and I have guests on that are amazing. I just had this young woman that I put up today who's awesome out of Boise, Idaho, and she doesn't call herself an alcoholic. She calls herself a gray area drinker, and she's helping people. I mean, if we're helping each other as women
Yeah.
get to this place that you feel okay with not drinking, then I think that's what's key. Because I got sober when my kids, are you there? You froze a little bit. So I want to make sure you're still there. Are you there? There you are.
Froze physically, but I can still hear. Oh, we're good. Yep.
Okay, good. So I think that I like to show that life afterwards is amazing. It's like I got
Yeah.
to a certain place. I don't really have many pictures that I would ever even show anybody of me drunk because it's not really pretty, let's be honest. I am more like, let's get busy living sober. Like it's not who you are. You're so many different things.
Right.
And I want to encourage people to live life. And it's like, and comedy is a way of releasing your sadness if you're going through a hard time. I mean, it's like following Maggie instead of going and picking up a drink. Like, go follow somebody that you really rings true to your heart, and it makes you like someone makes you laugh. Because for so long, I feel like I don't know what happened. It was like Rosie O'Donnell, like she wasn't that funny, I didn't think. And then, I think now you see Roseanne coming out on all these things. I think she's funny as shit. But we need to come out, and like young people talking about what's going on in our world is so important. Because like we had Lucille Ball I remember when we were little kids, we would watch I Love Lucy and it would be fun. And you'd sit
Right.
around the house and watch this stuff. But literally you put on the TV and it's all like reality shows. Like I don't want to watch a bunch of middle-aged women getting wasted and talking about, I'm going to get ketamine treatments, I'm divorcing my husband. Like, I don't care. Who cares? Right?
That's so funny. I was just telling somebody, I've never seen a single episode of any of the Housewives.
You're so lucky.
And people are like, you haven't, I'm like, they're like, you got to start from the beginning. And I'm like, it's something that's not even like in a hateful, I just was like, that never interested me. And I think absolutely the minority. I would say not many reality shows, which is interesting that I'm thinking about right now. I've never watched Kardashians a little bit here and there, but like, yeah, you're right. There's not a lot of, and I mean, TV is certainly a media outlet that is very much regulated, and you're not going to see a lot of the things that we saw growing up, right? Which is a bummer.
No, that's why I'm like, so that's the only reason I like the social media. I don't do TikTok anymore because of whatever my beliefs are. I don't like to have like China knowing what I'm doing. Just really just don't. I tried it for a little bit. I got sucked in and I was like, what am I doing? Somebody said, they're watching everything you're doing. I'm like, okay, done. So I don't do it anymore. And I know that I could probably get more followers that way and people will find me. But if it's meant to be, it'll be anyway. And I think this watching of other women like living their lives and aspiring to be rich and have a lot of bunch of material stuff, but that still doesn't make you happy. And
Right.
I feel like going into 2024, I feel like it's so nice that we're at this precipice and we can say, like, I want it to be different moving forward. And I want to support people that are funny and that are talking about things that make me laugh. And I can
Right.
chuckle with my kids and I can chuckle with my husband and say, oh my gosh, isn't that funny? Because there's like even Seinfeld isn't even around. I mean, it's just like we need that and it's missing. There's all this dark, enough dark. It's time
Yeah.
to bring up the light. I mean, I just heard the craziest thing a dear friend of mine sent to me was this young woman and they're like, can you name three countries? And she's like, mm, Canada, Oklahoma,
Oh no.
mm, Ohio. Now, I might be wrong with what the states were that she mentioned, but she called them countries. And then he was like, well, how many dimes equal a dollar? And she's like,
4.
20. 20 times equal a dollar. And then he said, can you name three Kardashian sisters?
Oh God.
So that's like where the change has to start. Like, come on, everybody. We got to get together and we got to come together and like, let's talk about funny things like being in line at CVS or Walgreens and going, oh my God, why do they put the vibrators right here where every person is waiting in line? Why are we picking on people that like to still eat lean cuisines if they're happy?
Leave Diane alone. Hashtag leave Diane alone. Oh my God. Um, so are your kids, how is that with being sober, and do your kids consume alcohol? Like, is that a
I'm
sensitive
so excited because then I'm going to ask you the same question now that we know that what's going on with your mom. What's your mom's first name?
Barb?
Okay, we have to talk about Barb.
Abs.
One of my best friends is named Babs since I was in fourth grade. Still talk to her all the time to this day. But anyway, when my kids were growing up, my oldest son, probably definitely tortured him a little bit more than anybody else. Okay. I didn't want him going to parties when he was in high school. He's like, we're invited to a party. I'm like, you're not going. The parents aren't home. He's like, you ruined my social life. I'm like, okay, but I was so frightened that because it's a genetic, I believe it's a family disease. Both my grandmothers, the Irish Catholic one and the Jewish one, were alcoholics. So for me, I was raised with alcoholism being, they're alcoholics and there's no solution. So for me, I was like, let's talk about it, but I don't really want you to do it. Something really bad could happen to you. So I was really scared about it. I mean, busted kids smoking weed, all those sorts of things. Luckily, by the grace of God, none of them have shown to have a problem right now, but they all drink and they all and I have alcohol in my house. I mean, they come, they bring their friends. I have beer. I have wine in my refrigerator. I have non-alcoholic beer. I have real beer. I for a long when I met my husband is 25 years and he was definitely a more skeptic about having this stuff around. But I said to him, there's this saying that we have, if you're spiritually well, you can be anywhere and have anything in your house. And that's how it's been for me. I've always had it around because people I have friends, most of my friends are drinkers. So it's like I have it for them. It doesn't bother me. I don't want any of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
How was it for you growing up with a mom? Because how old were you when she got sober? Or were you not born yet?
So I think I was, and I just, threw out 40 and I'm like, wait, I'm 40. So I think it's a little less. So she might be like 30. I was young when my mom quit. I don't remember my mom ever drinking. And I knew her father was a recovering alcoholic and a few of her siblings. So it's certainly, I believe, as you said, it's in the genes, it's in the blood of our family, Irish Catholic. Growing up, so I have an older brother who's 8 years older, and then I have a younger brother who's 3 years younger than me. So there's Brian, me, my younger brother Mike. My mom was, and to this day, doesn't love alcohol, like doesn't love being around it, but like also my parents would throw these like insane fun parties. I just, looking back, I'm like, God, how did you deal with that? So my mom was very much like, I don't love drinking. I know that this isn't all in our bloods, you know, in our genes. So she was pretty cautious and like hesitant and just like a hawk. Like there was no getting anything by my mom. Like my mom could smell booze from a block away. Don't even try it. And I can't speak for my brothers, but I would say I was an athlete in high school and an athlete in college. So I didn't really even get into like, you know, true partying, I think, until post college. But I had beers a few times in high school, and like my mom would just be standing at the door like, I know you're drinking, like don't try to hide it. I respected her and my dad a lot. Like I didn't want to get in trouble, so I didn't really push it. And the times I did, I was, you know, I would feel pretty guilty about it. So it's not to say, and we didn't have the type of house that had like a lot of alcohol in it. So it made it easy to not really like push the boundaries. But to this day, my mom's not a fan of any of us really drinking. Like she would love all of us to not be drinking at all. She, again, thinks like even just a couple is too many, and that you just don't need it. But I wouldn't say she's been like lecturing us on it, right? And anyone who meets my mom, and she's so funny, she's absolutely, both her and my dad were very funny. They don't believe that she's sober. Like almost, and I would say this, and I don't know how to say this in a way that like you have this like very outgoing, like not to say that someone that's sober has to have a different like vibe to them, but like my mom, they're like, she is. And I'm like, yeah, and because it doesn't have to be nerdy, right? It doesn't have to be like, I hate being around it. Like I'm not a good time. My mom's actually like such a good time that they're like, they can't believe it all the time. I'm like, doesn't mean that I've always known her to be that way. So it's never been anything different, but for some reason people tend to think like she's supposed to look and feel different. I'm like, no, she just doesn't drink. But you would see her at a party and be like, oh my God, she was the funniest person in the room, which is I'm sure what you get all the time. Like you're outgoing, you're talkative. Like, does that make sense?
It totally does. And you know what? The one thing that I want to say is that I do not, for one, my kids do not overindulge when I'm around. I've never really seen it, but I can remember one time. And they don't, and I don't have a bar like sitting out. It's like hidden in a closet, just to be totally transparent. Like it's in a closet. So when they come, it's in this closet. We know that it's there, but we don't, you know, it just sits there and I don't even think about it. It is, and with being around people that like I do not hang out with people that in fact I get bored very easily, because a lot of people that, and this might be a stereotype as well, but like somebody who's like half shit faced is like telling me the same story over and over again. I'm like, I'm over it. Next, I'm gone. Like I mean, it happened just recently. I said to my husband, I'm like, let's go.
Yeah.
Really? I'm like, yeah, enough. And now if I'm with people that are, because I find people interesting and I love talking about different things. And if I'm having an interesting conversation with somebody who might be sipping on something, then it's fine. I don't care, because I have my Pellegrino in a wine glass with a lemon. That's what I drink. And I can have a funny conversation and get into it. But if you're getting sloppy or you're getting yucky and all you want to do is talk about other people, then I'm out. It's boring. It's stupid. I have no interest in it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good way to put it. I would say like none of us have at least taken it too far in her presence because of the respect of like, she's going to call you out on it. And it's just, my dad was a police officer. So my dad drank. My dad wasn't sober, but my dad was like a bigger guy, would have like drinks at parties, but we never, like, again, we never had alcohol in our house. And I will say this, like, we were never the house, well, for sure with my mom ever where anyone underage ever drank. Like we were not like, they were like, don't even ask ever. It will never be our house. Don't, you know, so I was telling, now that we have a high schooler, like I was telling another mom this, like I loved that was my parents. I respected them. We would go to people's houses, parents let us drink, and I'm sorry, we didn't respect them. To this day, they're still the parents, if they're even alive, who look like they've been partying for 40 years. Like they have party face, right? I'm like, and I was glad my parents weren't like that. It was like a standard that I've held now as a parent. Like we're not going to be that house ever. I don't care how cool people think it is in North Shore. We're not going to be that house. So, but what was I gonna say? Oh, about my mom. And as far as like her being around other people that are drinking, she definitely gets like she'll like family weddings. She's just like, as soon as everybody gets to that point of like incoherent, I'm good.
Yeah. It's really interesting. And you being just a little bit older, it's because I'm like, you're in between me and my kids in terms of age. And Barb, I hope I get to meet you one day. It'll be so fun. Come to Florida for some sunshine because it's really cold in Chicago, isn't
Oh
it?
my gosh, we would love it.
Oh my God, come to Florida. But for my kids, it was really interesting with them growing up because I was divorced and I lived in a really small house in the downtown part of in Wayne, Pennsylvania. I have a small little house and kids would come over. And now at this point in my life, my kids are obviously not 21. So there is no alcohol in my house. And when my kids are growing up at all. And so kids would come over and just hang out at my house. And I'd be like, why are you, my kids aren't even here. They're like, oh, Mrs. Chance, I just needed to come here and like just chill because they knew that there was no alcohol in my house and it was a safe place. And I think it's very funny now that they're like, especially when my oldest went to college, he was like, Mom, he was in a fraternity and he's like, Mom, it's so weird. They like tie balloons onto the back of the moms that drink because moms look really good today, but you know that it's a mom because she's got a balloon on her back. And they're like throwing drinks like we are. And it is really uncomfortable. And you don't think about it when you're there, but your kids don't really want to party with you. Okay. That's
No.
not cool. They want you to be the mom and the dad. They want someone that's like level playing field. If anything happens, like I want to be able to call you. I mean, there's no way.
No.
No, no.
No, even my girlfriends that I grew up with, who I'm still very close with, we don't even to this day, even when we all turned 21, we were in our mid 20s, early 30s, now we're in our 40s, do not drink to excess or even a few in front of anybody's parents. It's still a respect thing. Even when I smoked cigarettes, like in my 20s, I was working at a bar. I didn't smoke really in college, but I smoked when I worked at the bar when I was working downtown. I would see someone's parent like getting off the train and I was like, oh my God, even though I was a full grown adult with like a mortgage and a car payment, I was like, oh God, no. Even that's how we would feel with like drinking, right? Like it was a respect level of like, I'm not going to do this around anybody's parents because it's disrespectful to be sloppy. And all of us, we were actually just talking about this recently, like what makes us all feel that way about each other's parents? Because not one of us would take advantage of it. And I don't know if it was a respect level or how we were raised. None of it. And my mom's the only one that's like truly sober. Their parents weren't, but it was like, I don't know. So good for your kids for being that way, at least acknowledging it. I think if we all have that standard, everyone will be a little bit better off in life. As far as the moms partying in college, that's gross. You're just setting up your kids' expectations pretty low as far as what they can get away with. You know what I mean?
Oh, it's so interesting. I love that you've used the word respect so many times today. And it's funny when my youngest son, Henry, at that point, I was like busy. I had this marketing firm, this wonderful woman, Michelle, picked me up and said, she owns a huge marketing firm in Philadelphia. And she said, I want to take you on pro bono. And my nickname's Busy. So my brother could never say Elizabeth, so he called me Busy. So she's like, I think instead of being called Sober Not Ashamed, you should be called Busy Living Sober. And it's all been
Oh, I love that.
since the beginning. That's why it's called Busy Living Sober. So my youngest, the one he's graduating actually from Georgia Tech in a couple weeks, but when he was graduating, all of his buddies, he had all these guys and I raised them in Philadelphia and they were called Dilly Dilly because that was going on with the Eagles and football team. And and they all got into this picture, 20 boys, I think it was, and and I said, say cheese, and they all went, busy living sober. So they all have known
Yeah.
that, there is such a thing of of being sober and having fun. And if you
Yeah.
have a problem, it's like I'm little slowly but surely, the stigma is going away. That stigma of like that your mom had, so much so.
Yeah.
And she was a pioneer in so many ways because a lot of women weren't getting sober back then. My sponsor, who I have, has 40 years, and she, again, she was a pioneer. They kept going and they kept going, and it was mainly a men's club. It wasn't as many women, and now, there's more women's group and more women today. And I think, to go back to COVID really quickly, like COVID was a way a lot of women had to deal with the brunt of a lot of things, right? And like, I can't believe in Chicago, a year and a half having your kids at home and not sending them to school, and you couldn't go to church and you couldn't go to a meeting, and it's cold. So you're not really meeting outside in a park like you could do in Florida when it was closed for the little time that it was closed here. There was no,
They taped off our parks in Chicago too.
yeah. So
Favorites when they fucking put like orange tape around the parks and would take big piece of plastic and put it over the slide so you couldn't go on it. That was another thing our mayor did at the time. Anyway, sorry to interject.
no, it's scary. It's so sad. And you wonder why women went and turned to drinking, right? Why?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, it was literally the only thing they could do to calm their nerves, to calm their anxieties, to calm this fear that there was so much fear of like, oh my God, I can't send my kids to school. I'm not making enough money. Now gas costs a gallon of milk, eggs. Like, how are we going to do it? And we're already busting a move here, both of us. How are we going to do it? Right?
Right.
I've got all this stuff. What's going to make me feel better? Well, the one thing that's open all the time is a liquor store.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, a billion dollar business out there, and it's just something has to change because Babs, like myself, raising your kids, being sober is so amazing. And staying sober. I mean, I couldn't ever imagine my kids calling me going, oh, yeah, I decided to just have a cocktail, but I already know I'd have one and I've had 47 and forget it. I could never do it again.
Right. Did you meet your husband in the program? Is that okay? No.
I met my husband on Match.com.
Oh, I love it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I love that.
My first husband got sober 10 years ago. He called me and it's so funny. I'm coming out on a podcast soon and I go into this whole story, but my ex-husband had come over. We had busted one of my kids for smoking weed and he comes in and he's got a red face and that was like nothing new. And he's like, I'm going to go pay a parking ticket. And I'm like, okay, have a good time. So let's start hitting on the way out. Bye-bye. And like 2 minutes later, he calls me. He's like, he's the only person who calls me Liz, can you come get me? I'm about to get arrested for DUI. And I picked him up and I'm so crazy. I'm like, either you go to treatment or I have your legs broken. And he's like, okay, I'm going to go to treatment. And he's been sober ever since. And he said to me last week, he's like, can you believe of all the people in my life that I called you my sober ex-wife? It's kind of crazy.
The universe works in crazy ways, but I love that he called you. That's amazing.
Isn't it amazing? It's just life is so good. And I think that like people like you that are changing, like getting us out there and laughing, I just have to say thank you so much. When
Oh
you
my
go
God.
on tour, you got to book down here. If you come to Miami, come to Delray, you got to come and we got to get together. Okay.
How far is Delray from Miami? I go to Miami a lot.
I'm 45 minutes, an hour, depending on traffic. Yeah.
All right.
I'm above Fort Lauderdale. I'm above Boca and below Palm Beach.
Love it. All right. I promise I'll let you know when I'm in town. I really appreciate you having me. This is awesome.
This was incredible. Thank you so much, Maggie. And you guys, you're going to be able to find Maggie, all of her links and everything in the description. And until next time, everybody, thanks again. Sending you hugs, Maggie. Thanks for listening to Conversations with Busy. I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you did, if you could subscribe, that would mean the world to me. And follow me on all social media. And you can also get my newsletter every Friday morning into your inbox. Just go to elizabethchance.com and subscribe. Take care.